Question. So when you bake a cake, do you just mishmash all the ingredients together randomly and pray that when you throw it in the oven, you're going to get a great result? Hmm, I don't know about that. Let's talk about all this back in a minute. Hey, good morning. Good morning. This is Jan from New York City. My channel name is Jan from New York City. Saves money. How's everybody doing today? Hope as always that this audio video finds everybody doing well. Yeah. I really do. Hope you had a great night. Listen, gonna talk to you a minute about recipes. What? This says money recipe, but we'll get into that in about a minute or so. Okay, I don't know if you're aware of this, but baking is a science. Yes, it is. You have to follow the recipe for baking precisely, or it's just not going to come out right. This is why there is a thing called a recipe. For example, if the recipe from scratch, I'm talking about from scratch, okay? And even ditto from the box cake mixes too, you have to follow the rules, the recipe on the back of the box, all right? Now, all right, sometimes you make exceptions. That's a different story with the cookies and all that. Not talking about that. But in general in life, if you're going to prepare a cake from scratch, you have to follow the recipe because baking is a science. If the recipe requires, let's say, baking powder and you don't use it or whatever, or figure out a swap, it's not going to come out. Okay. So too for other things. Now you can get away with it a little bit with things that you make on top of the stove and the skillet. You could sort of play around with things that you cook, but not a cake recipe, for example. You must follow the rules for that because baking is a science. There you go. There you go. Now, let me ask you a question. If I cooked some spaghetti, right? And I looked at it. Okay. And some people actually used to do this back in the old days, or so I've heard. They take a random amount of spaghetti and they throw it against the wall and pray that it sticks. And if it sticks, that means it's done. What? To me, I don't know about to you, but to me, that sounds kind of iffy, to say the least. So there are the methods, of course, to testing for the tenderness and if you like it al dente. I like my spaghetti between a little bit between al dente and a little softer. Not quite very al dente and not quite mushy either. I'm not in the mood of mushy spaghetti either. So somewhere a little bit balanced from the two to a little bit soft and tender. Now, what does all of this have to do with money? Let me ask you a question. What is your savings stop? Do you take your money when you get paid, for example, whatever, you get your monthly income, or some people get paid weekly, lucky them. Some people get paid every 2 weeks. Some people get paid on the 15th and the 30th, which I don't think is easy because I've been through that, been there, done that when I was a teacher. I did not like it. But what happens when you do get your pay, your allocation, whatever, your social security, whatever? Do you randomly, now imagine your cash as that spaghetti that I just mentioned. Once it's cooked, or you're not sure if it's cooked yet, you take some of that cash, right? And you just throw it around, boom, and it hits the wall. Is that a guaranteed recipe for successful savings? Well, maybe yes. Well, maybe no. It all depends. It's really kind of iffy. Like anything good in life, believe it or not, there is actually a recipe, a method that one might consider, or I strongly encourage folks to consider. And I am suggesting it strongly. There is like a little bit of a savings rule of thumb. So instead of it sounding like, like a restrictive rule of thumb, I rather call it a recipe for success. I rather consider it like when I'm baking that cake and I'm following the directions. I'm following the directions not because I want to feel restrictive, but because I want to feel secure. You see where I'm going with this? I don't want to be throwing my spaghetti, e.g., dollars, up at the wall and praying that it sticks. See where I'm going with this? Henceforth, the idea of cash and savings being a recipe. You're probably wondering, what exactly, calculated into percentages, would this rule of thumb for savings be? Or we'll call it a recipe for success. All right. So basically, the general, now remember, it all varies too according to age levels. You could, definitely check into it. And I encourage you to check into it. Google, do a search on this and check it out for, further information. But this is just the general idea. Okay. So some people could save more percentages depending on their age bracket, this, that, and that, and this. All right. Now, okay, there's a rule of thumb. All right. And it's called the 50, 30, and 20% rule. Oh, you're probably wondering about this. All right. Well, at the 50, 30, and 20% rule of thumb, if you will, suggested is at least 20% goes into your savings. So 20% of your income suggested to go into your savings. Only you know the answer to that. We don't talk about the specifics here. Don't give me any comments on here. I like to protect your privacy, so do not get into financial specifics here. All right. 50% maximum for your basic necessities. So 50% of your maximum income should go into your basic necessities. 30% of it should go to discretionary items, things that you have choices with, like things that you could sort of, play around with in terms of yeses or nos, no affirmatives on this, just discretionary. Use your discretion, use your thoughts, okay? And this is actually, if you think about it, a rather easy recipe for saving or keeping your money. So go according to this 50, 30, and 20% rule of thumb, remembering that at least 20% of savings should go to it, 50% maximum for your necessities, 30% goes to discretionary. You know what I like about the discretionary? The discretionary is just that. It's something that it's maybe, some people like break it down into like entertainment values or whatever, certain purchases, whatever. This is just something you could work with. But going back to the beginning of this video, let's think about this for a second. Baking that cake. If the experts are sharing with us, okay, a recipe for financial savings, that's a good rule of thumb, we have the option to take advantage of it. Now, is it always going to be perfectly exactly like that? As always, these things, in my opinion, are guidelines. These are guidelines, but at least they are a guideline. Now, if you have automated savings, for example, and use this again, get familiar with your numbers, get familiar with now. I don't care for math, you know that, but there are times you gotta use your math. Just saying, just saying. Use your calculator. Take that quiet time in the afternoon. Some folks do not even know what 20% of their income is. Oh, by the way, I'm talking about pre-tax. Forgot to mention that part. Sorry. Pre-tax income. So take some quiet time. Listen, it's all a matter of method. It is a recipe. Hey, I wish everybody well. And I really and truly, of course, hope and pray that this helps someone. And this is why I like to end my show with this. See you the next time.